This podcast is brought to you by Amusement Warehouse Magazine, the industry's largest trade publication. We cover amusement parks, carnivals, fairs, festivals, history, safety columns. We really got it all when it comes to the amusement business. Only remaining print publication in the amusement industry on a regular basis. So if you're interested in what the amusement industry has to offer, subscribe today. You can subscribe by logging on to amusementwarehouse.com, carnivalwarehouse.com, or amusementparkwarehouse.com.
And welcome to another edition of the Amusement Warehouse Podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest. Is Patty Sullivan of the Eli Bridge Company. If you don't know Eli Bridge, well, you have to know Eli Bridge first of all. But in our industry, they are, like what Coke is to a regular person. They have the most well-known name you could possibly know, and they operate to this day. And we're going to find out hopefully a lot about the history of the company and see how things go. And thank you for coming on.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
you taking a little bit of time.
Thanks.
I know you're busy here. So, Eli Bridge, how'd you get started in this industry?
Well, my great-grandfather, William E. Sullivan, had been a bridge builder in the late 1800s. And he went to the Chicago World's Fair in 1893 and saw the Ferris Wheel. I mean, this was designed and built by Ferris. Mm-hmm. So he was so amazed by it that he had to go in and check out all of the inner workings of it, and he had to buy an extra ticket to do that. And tickets were, I think, 50 cents at the time,
That's
which was a
expensive,
lot of money back then.
It's like a week's pay.
Yeah. And it was 50 cents to get into the fair, and then it was 50 cents to ride the wheel. And so he had already gone up for one ride, and then he wanted to look at the inner workings, and so they made him buy another ticket. So, I mean, this was a lot of money to spend on something.
A little research, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. But he was enamored with it. He had been quite an inventor before that, and as a matter of fact, one time he had his wife and kids loaded up in their car, and he was coming out of the door, and the lock wasn't working right. Well, he had to stay and fix the lock before he could actually go out and get in the car and take everybody to church. Well, guess what? They didn't make it to church that day, and his wife wasn't very happy with him. But he was always noodling around with things and fixing things and doing some engineering of things.
Right. That's what bridge guys love to do, right?
Uh-huh. And so he just fell in love with the idea of building a wheel that could go around to county fairs and could be transported.
Well, that's the thing with the wheel at the World's Fair was not even close to port. They like threw it away when it was done. They just took it down or something.
Well,
and sold pieces
they
of it.
took it down from Chicago and then set it back up in St. Louis.
Oh my gosh!
Because it was at the 1904 fair in St. Louis.
Same one.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But it had been so expensive to take it down and then transport it that they ended up basically just blowing it up.
Right. We got rid of it at the end.
Because it was they couldn't make enough money on it to pay to take it down.
Yeah. So it was in all effects a permanent structure.
Yes.
So what you're
it was 256 feet tall.
Somebody told me the weight one time too was something astronomical.
Oh, it was. And when it was up in Chicago, you could actually, if you were at the top of the wheel, you could see 4 states from the top of the wheel.
Really?
Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Mm-hmm. So it was really something, and it took about 20 minutes for one revolution, and a ride was considered 2 revolutions.
Oh, really?
So you were on there for about 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's quite a ride.
And in a couple of the cars, they even had little food and drink concessions.
Refreshments, very nice.
And 40 minutes, you're in there for 40 minutes. So he just thought this was the best thing since sliced bread. And so he came home to Root House, where he lived at the time, and he told my great-grandmother, "Dear, I think I've figured out what I want to build." And once he told her, she said, "Well, that's nice, dear, but don't tell anybody because they'll all think you're crazy." So it took him from 1893 to 1900 to finish his drawings and to earn enough money doing other things to buy the materials to build the wheel that he wanted to build. Plus, he took on a partner whose name was Jim Clements for $150. And Clements was a machinist also, and they rented a part of I think it was the Illinois Bridge Company. They rented their equipment.
Facility, equipment.
And built it all there in Jacksonville. And then when they got it done, they set it up in the center of Jacksonville and sold tickets for 5 cents a ride. And I think they ended up with like $8.32. And when I asked, well, how do you get 32 cents it's a nickel a ride? Well, knowing great-grandfather, he let some kids in for just a penny apiece.
That stays.
But he'd been a Sunday school teacher at the Root House Christian Church, and I had become a member there for a number of years. And it was really cool because he and his wife were 2 of the charter members of that church. So
they must have had some picnics with Ferris wheels.
Oh, yeah. Well, for the first couple of wheels, he would take it out with his partner. And actually his partner bought the first one from him because he saw how much money it made.
Right.
So great-grandfather had to get somebody else to go out with him and to set it up and tear it down. And then they set up a tent where they slept. And to keep the money safe while they were out and about, they dug a hole in the ground underneath the tent and put their money in there. And so he came home from the first round of taking the wheel out, and they had more money than they could have imagined.
Really?
And
there's just no other attractions like that, right?
No,
nothing.
No.
So you're bringing this unbelievable thing to people are just like, what
all
the heck?
these different county fairs.
And we get excited now when we see a wheel, but then it must have been like seeing a dinosaur or something.
Yeah. Well, it was just, people weren't used to getting to ride something like that. And so it was pretty much of a hit, and his partner bought the first wheel from him. So then he had to build another wheel and take it out to make enough money to build the next one.
Was his intention to be a builder, or was it just to operate the ride initially?
No, his intention was always to be a builder.
It was, okay,
yes.
Interesting. Because it wasn't, we don't think back, but it wasn't a business then, right?
No.
Nobody had Ferris wheels. It was maybe you had a merry-go-round and a carnival with a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
But you had actually, and I always have a hard time putting myself back in that time. But to have that as a business plan is a whole thing. You got to think of it because it didn't exist. Now we know it exists.
Well, in 1906, he finally took on capital investors, and they incorporated, and so he could stay at the plant and build. And just sell them as he got them built. So, and they did that for a number of years, and he wasn't even able to buy the most shares to still be the president of the company.
Wow.
And which was okay, because he just wanted to be able to build these wheels. This was his idea.
Builders like to build.
He was so proud of it. And so that's what he did, and eventually he was able to buy all the stock back. But he was just so in love with being able to design and build that. And even from the first wheel to the second wheel, he changed it quite a bit, because the first wheel was put up with nuts and bolts, and there were like 532 nuts and bolts, so it took a while. So by the second wheel, he got pins and Archie type things, so it could set up and tear down a lot faster that way. And the first wheel actually had buggy seats for wheel seats.
Wow.
And they didn't start making their own seats for a couple of years. And of course, the first ones were all wooden seats with the wooden dowels and everything.
And no lights, right, at this point?
Oh, yeah, they had lights.
Oh, they did?
They had lights.
Oh, smart.
Well, amazingly, Ferris's wheel had lights.
Yeah,
and if you think back to how you transfer the power to the outside of the wheel when it's turning, Ferris had to really come up with a good idea to be able to transfer that power out there and light the lights. So, because you can't just plug it in, because you wind up the cord.
Yeah, that's true.
And so,
Wind up the cord.
well,
Pull the generator into the wheel.
So, yes, they started, and it was, the lights were all on wooden bars, and it was the old porcelain light fixture, and then they just put bulbs in them. And it was just, he was really tickled that his idea had grown so well.
Portable. And this was the first portable wheel? Nobody else was doing this at the time?
No.
Wow.
Well, I think
feel like I'm touching history, like you're George Washington or something. I'm learning about the thing. It's
there was a Mr. Conderman who...
I heard of a Conderman wheel, okay.
The Conderman wheel. I think there's one over in the museum. And he built his wheel about the same time great-grandfather did. So it was, I think there was actually even some kind of a little, set to about that. But great-grandfather had his drawn up and started before Conderman had. Right. So it didn't really go anywhere, but...
And he outlasted him.
And Conderman no longer exists,
right.
And Eli Bridge Company does. So...
That's
most
fascinating how we're recording that thing. We're recording
the most interesting thing was he did make a couple more improvements to the wheel.
Probably constant from how you described him. He sounded like
the fact that he had gone out and set up and torn down the wheels
the key,
himself, right? Then you really know what the people you're selling this have to do to make it work. So, but the first wheel is standing in front of our factory today.
Is that right? How tall was it?
It was 45 feet tall.
Pretty good size.
So then he started making, and around the time the first wheels were coming out, he also made a 10-seater. The first one was a 12-seater, then a 10-seater. Then he made the kiddie wheel. There was a kiddie wheel back then. And then he moved to Jacksonville in 1919. And I have pictures of him shoveling the first spade of dirt. And we're still in that building today from 1919. So, But the one thing that he didn't do that kind of surprised me, we have a wheel room where you can set a wheel up inside. Well, he came up with the 16-seater in
He did that early?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
He did that in 1922.
Really?
After they'd built the wheel room, but it didn't fit, so they've always had to set those up outside. But it's really cool when I first started going down to Eli, we'd often get to take one of the first rides on a new wheel, and there were big windows out the top of that building. So we got to, go up and we could look out the windows and see Jacksonville.
Wow.
And
it's like being Willy Wonka's kid or something.
Yeah.
Like you're in the chocolate
and
factory.
and I tell you what, it was a pretty big deal if we hadn't behaved and we didn't get to go ride the first wheel. And especially once the Scrambler came out, which was in '53. We loved riding the Scrambler, but if we weren't good, we couldn't go.
That's some punishment, can't it?
Well, that's real. I mean, that was a threat that was held over our heads.
So I'm shocked actually that he diversified so quickly with the sizes of the wheels. Usually people that build one thing and Henry Ford had a black Ford, right? And that was it.
Yeah.
But for him, I had no idea. I thought the 16 came much later.
Nope. That was in 1922, but in 1918, I believe it was, he built an 85-foot tall gondola wheel.
Really?
Yes.
Was it sideways or not?
It was
essentially sideways for.
Well, it was a gondola wheel.
But it was front facing. It was loading. Did it load on the side or did it load on?
No, it loaded. It was outside.
Wow.
And it just loaded, kind of toward the bottom. And
it was portable.
Well, they weren't real portable, the 85-foot wheels. And I think the first one went up to Seattle, and it was always referred to as the Seattle wheel.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Did you go to the World's Fair? Oh, no, it wasn't that.
No. But
it's like 60s.
And then in the, I think it was in.
I'm going to give you a friendly reminder about tearing down.
Okay, thank you.
8 to 5. Thank
Okay.
That was a public service announcement from Tom Arnold, who was on the podcast yesterday.
Thank you, Tom. So,
Patty, you've only been here like 60-some years. Were you going to leave early?
No, probably not. They know we always stay the whole time. But then I think it was 1918, they built what was called an observation, I can't remember, an observation deck that was very much like the pieces that are going out now that have the great big long arm, and then they have all the seats on this at the end of this one, and it goes up in the air and goes around. And back then it was called an observation deck because you got to go up high. And
this guy invented all the rides. Like we should have just followed him around because he invented everything.
Well, I tell you what, I wish we had kept doing some of those
early
things.
Gondolas? Oh my gosh, that would have been.
Yes, we would have had. Well, we had the first gondola wheel.
Right, but it wasn't until Chance started making them in the 80s, right, or 70s?
70s,
right around
80s. Yeah, probably the 80s.
There wasn't really that kind of wheel out there.
And but I can't find any of the prints for it. And I mean, we have a lot of archives, and they may be there somewhere, but I haven't been able to find them because those two rides would have been, fun to redo.
Absolutely.
And it just, it's like, well, if we'd kept doing those, we would have been way ahead of some of the manufacturers now.
You're not kidding. That's crazy. I had no idea. So when he started selling, who was his market? Did he? Have an idea of who he wanted to sell to? Was it they
carnivals? They sold to carnivals mostly,
Okay.
but they also sold to parks
Right.
because every wheel they built was essentially a park model,
Right.
but they would just take it apart and put it in a truck and take it to the next place and set it back up.
Right.
And we actually had a carnival in Illinois, not very far from us, who was still setting up a ground model wheel every place. And the Bowdoin Amusements. And man, they could do it in no time flat. It was amazing to watch them.
Probably the right guy. As soon as that guy retires.
Oh, well, they had done it all their lives.
Oh, the kid, yeah, the family, yeah. Sure.
And it was a family carnival. And by the time, because they came to Jacksonville in the year 2000 and set up in our main square where the original wheel, Eli wheel, would have been set up. And man, they just set that thing up and took it down in no time flat. But the dad, he was second generation. He didn't help with the actual building the wheel anymore, but he sat there and supervised. And those guys were just almost running.
What year wheel was that? Do you know?
That was, gosh, I wish I remembered. It would have probably been a 40s or 50s wheel. And so that was really fun because that was our 100th anniversary then. So we had a little kind of celebration in Jacksonville because Jacksonville was 175 years old and Eli was 100 years old. So it was kind of fun that, we had those going on at the same time, and a lot of different things were planned around, those two dates.
Events, yeah. So selling to a carnival in the 10, 20s, how does it even? How do you do it? How do you find them? Like, what did you do?
They wrote a lot of letters back there, and it was all by letters because they didn't have any trade shows back in 1900.
I think Billboard was around by then, right? At that point,
I think it may have.
I know that was a big form of communication with.
But we had a little booklet called the. What was it back then? It became the Big Eli News, and we put those out for decades. So we and of course those got sent to all prospective customers and to all the customers. And then at that time there were a lot of towns who would buy a wheel and set it up for either running year-round or for special events.
And the trolley parks at the end of the thing.
And so it was just...
So he would just mail everywhere he could. Thought about it.
Yeah.
And you have here a brochure that somebody just recently gave you about...
Yes. One of our customers brought this in. And this is one of our...
you can see even the envelope. It looks like it's...
yeah, you can see that it's been around for a while. And
that's an amazing...
We're going to get it scanned so we no longer touch this anymore. But
this might be the last time you see it live, folks.
But there are pictures of...
And when was this from again? Do we remember?
This is from 1913, I believe.
What the heck?
And my great-grandfather actually signed each copy. So William W.E. Sullivan was on them.
But by 1913, he had a big enough business that he made a beautiful brochure like this.
And put pictures of the wheels in it, and
now, how much was a wheel back then?
Well, I think the first one he was going to try to sell for $5,000, which was a lot of money back then. But
can you show some of the pictures to the...
Yeah, with the fan going, it's a little hard, but we had...
Close the pages for us.
Yeah, but it was. We sold at this time. We only had the 10s and the 12s because the 16s weren't out yet, and we didn't have a number 5 wheel at that point. The 5 came around a little bit later because it was 5 feet shorter than the number 12. So it was a little bit easier to set up and tear down and load back into the trucks.
And that's where the name came from? It was just 5 feet shorter? Is that oh, wow.
So it was the number 5. It didn't have 5 seats on it. It had 12. But then here was one of our wooden seats with the little wooden dowels in it and everything. And they used to build crates to put the seats in to ship them. So, and then here's a picture of a seat on the wheel. Yeah. So, they were all oak in the first year, in the early years. But the first seats actually were buggy carriage seats. And then he designed and we built
seats. They're so iconic looking, those beautiful seats that are metal now. But.
And then we went to, in the 50s, I think it's
like a book. It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. In the 50s, we went to steel seats, which were heavier than all get out to have to pick up and put on the wheel. And then in 72, I think it was, we went to aluminum seats because they were so much lighter. So
you're saying this is by 1913?
Yes.
He had sold quite a few wheels already.
Uh-huh.
He could put them out pretty quickly? Like, how long would it take to make a wheel back then?
Well, once he got staff, the shop staffed, it was, I don't know, they were putting out several wheels a year.
He took a lot of pictures of the same wheel.
No. But this basically showed them how it's set up and everything.
It's like almost doubled as an operator manual to us?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And there are all the parts, pieces and parts.
It would have took me a year to make this book. It's so detailed.
Well, I have a pretty good idea of who typed all this up because
really?
He had a secretary, and she lived in Rood House, or lived in Whitehall, and she walked to work up in Rood House every day. So there's the gondola wheel.
Eli Bridge with a gondola wheel from 1909.
No, 19.
It says 09.
Yes, it is 09. It is.
Seattle.
Yeah, it went to
at the
Seattle.
Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition. If anybody says they invented a gondola wheel,
we were first.
1909. Holy mackerel!
Is that not cool?
It's better. It's mind blowing. I mean, it's just absolutely mind blowing. He must have been like a Tasmanian devil inventing these things. I mean,
he was an inventor. That's just all there was to it. He actually invented a gate for a cattle fencing that would lock. And I don't remember whether he patented that or not, but he wasn't so worried about patenting it as he was that it worked and could easily be opened and closed while they were moving cattle in and out and things like that.
This is just blowing my mind because if you started in 1905, the first wheel that he actually put out?
No, 1900.
1900 for the first wheel he put. By 9 years later, he was making a gondola wheel.
Uh-huh.
He had 4 to 5 different size wheels that he was putting out. He's got pictures of them all over the place. I mean, he must have sold the heck out of those wheels.
Well, I think they built them as fast as they could and shipped them out.
Not like today, it'll be 5-6 years before you get a ride.
Well,
some of these places.
Hopefully not.
I don't mean from Eli Bridge. I mean just in general in the industry. It's like you hear stories. Oh, I'm going to get my ride in what year is it? 2029.
Well, when the Scramblers came out in 1953, they actually were able to just start a list of who wanted to buy one. A wait list of who wanted to buy one. And people would even pay the price of a scrambler to somebody else to get their place in line, and then they'd pay for the scrambler on top of that. So that was pretty cool as well.
That's cool. So just people going back in history just to set the mindset, because people, you take it for granted again, but a carnival consisted of shows,
a merry-go-round,
a bunch of shows, a merry-go-round. And then a wheel was the next. A wheel and then a whip, I guess, came next, right around there. But a wheel was revolutionary because
Yes.
it was high. It was
And
a
you could
thrill.
see so far
You
from
could
the
see,
top.
and to have something like that out there and just must have just changed the game like you
Yeah.
wouldn't believe. So no wonder why it was so popular. I mean, people must have just gone crazy for it. Was your great grandfather like a celebrity in a way, that like the inventor of the wheel in America? You know, the portable wheel, was he like?
Well, I don't think he was at the time, but he is in the OABA Hall
yeah,
of
of course,
Fame.
yeah. So I'm talking even like
back-
just
back
commercially,
then-
like for regular people.
Back then, I think he did make quite a name for himself, and but it's fun to look at some of the old correspondence between great-grandfather and prospective customers and customers, and because they were very formal.
It struck me. I was reading the book on Conklin shows. Who was around? Patty was around in these times, and because you never think about these things. But I was watching, like they have extensive archives too, the Conklins, and there was like a letter buying a ride. I can't remember. It might have been even an Eli Wheel or a Scrambler
we
later on.
sold them wheels.
And it was like, hi, hi, Mr. Sullivan. I would really like to buy a wheel, and I'd like to see it come, whenever it would come. And then they would write back and they'd say, great, it's $12,000 and blah, 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 blah. And then he'd write back, and it was just so, you can't even, it blows your mind because you live in this world now where you just, hi, just texted Patty Sullivan, I bought a ride, for $5.
Well, but mail was amazingly fast back then.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And you could telegram.
It wasn't Pony Express, but it was, mail got around pretty fast back then.
And you had a plan, and your word was your bond then, because
it was.
You were really
it was a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah, because a lot of people in those carnival histories thank your grandfather, your great grandfather, other famous big manufacturers at the time, because they would kind of half finance some things sometimes, or at least wait a little bit or help them out with certain things to make things happen. So it was an amazing time where people worked together and their word was absolutely solid. Yeah, absolutely solid.
Well, and at one point in time, a customer offered to give great-grandfather a diamond as a down payment on his wheel, but he wouldn't accept that.
Oh no!
So my great-grandmother got involved, and she paid for the diamond, and he got a wheel, and she made a ring for my great-grandfather, and it's actually been passed down, and I have that same diamond today.
No way.
Yes.
That's it?
That's it.
Show that to the camera there.
This has been on the fingers of all the presidents of Eli Bridge Company since about 1920 something.
And you could still trade it for a high five?
No.
Straight up?
Not quite. I don't think the diamond has increased in value like they have.
Like steel?
Yeah.
You have any idea of how many wheels they would put out a year, like in the teens? No idea.
I couldn't tell you right offhand, but I know we've built and sold well over 1,500 wheels.
Total,
and over 500 scramblers.
That's amazing. So the wheels were the business though, from the 1910s, through. And carnivals too, again, there weren't that many rides around, even going up until the 50s. So at some point, now who was in charge of Eli Bridge as you entered the Scrambler generation? And were there other attempts at other rides before that too?
Oh, well, all those other rides.
Sizes of wheels, yeah.
Well, and the observation platform ride. My great-grandfather passed away in 1932, and so my grandfather ran the company, and he might even have started running it just a little bit before that, when great-grandfather was not as well. And so he ran it until my father took over in probably the early 70s, but he was still an engineer, for Eli at that time. But He did a lot of things, and he worked with the other engineer that we had on staff at the time in the early 50s when Dad was recalled to the Navy, and he was on the USS Duxbury Bay in the Mediterranean, and they would pass reports and drawings, send them back and forth all the way out to the Mediterranean. And so it's just, it's really interesting how all these things came about. Yeah.
So the idea for the scrambler came from one of your workers, or from the?
No, the idea of the scrambler came from a gentleman out of, I believe, Atlanta.
Okay.
And he had a fairly similar ride, but you had to dig 8 feet down into the. Well, you had to dig 18 feet down.
Whatever's down there, yeah.
And so they really couldn't put that up on a street because, towns aren't going to let you dig up their street like that. But it was quite a ride, I guess. So great-grandfather went to see this gentleman, and they made a deal that Eli could start building scramblers, but we did so many changes because Dad and this other engineer were both, they were registered professional engineers, and there were things on the scrambler that they agreed were not built strongly enough. So they did make some changes, and instead of having to dig way down, they came up with the planetary gear system, so that there's one big 132 tooth gear on the bottom, and then that runs everything else and out to the ends of the unit poles. So it was actually, and grandfather had told the man he would pay him X number of dollars if he would let him have the details.
He just bought it outright.
Yes.
The plans, okay.
But by the time they got it built, the patent attorney told great-grandfather that, your scrambler is so much different than that gentleman's ride that you don't really owe him anything. And grandfather said, we shook on that deal, and I owe that gentleman the money. And so he wasn't willing to, back out of the deal when his lawyer told him he could. But he kept good faith with them and paid what he'd promised to pay him, and so we started really going into production on the scrambler in 55.
55. So that was a corporate decision, but they said, okay, we're going to add to our inventory of rides now. We're going to go from a wheel to
a scrambler.
And the wheels leveled off by then, or was it still going strong?
Oh, no, because in the 50s, after the war was over, they were just,
boom.
I think they kicked out 50 wheels a year for a while out then, because everybody was coming home from the war and people had money and they wanted to go out and do something fun. So, because there was a lot of optimism at that time. So he did very well with wheels there, and then when they added the scrambler in, they really didn't have to do any advertising or anything because
their customers already were so.
Yes, they had so many people who wanted to buy a scrambler that really all they had to do was, answer the phone, take their name, and put them on the list.
Wow. And that was a big ride back then. I mean,
yes, it was.
We're talking in an era where there's all these crazy rides, but the scrambler must have been like a massive addition to a carnival back then.
Yes, it was, and it was such a change from, other type rides. The Tilt-A-Whirl didn't come out until after the scrambler did, and as a matter of fact, for a while we sold Tilt-A-Whirls for Selner.
Did you really?
When they first started, because they didn't have the name recognition that Eli did at that time.
All the way from Minnesota, they
Uh-huh.
got you down there.
So it was very cool. Well, when people went to the conventions back then, the manufacturers all knew each other and worked together. And Art Selner had asked Grandfather if he would be willing to, help sell them till they got on their feet.
Kind of give his blessing for it or something.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
But they were good friends, and they stayed friends until they were all gone away.
Do you remember some of the first people to buy a scramble, or some big carnivals, or any names we know? Or?
Sam starts with an O. Sam. I can't think of his last name. Solomon. Sam Solomon, I believe. And he bought the first one. And
was he a carnival guy, or was he?
Oh yeah.
Park? Oh,
he was a carnival guy.
Okay.
So.
Patty Conklin buy an early one? Was he?
I think so, because they were big.
Settlemeyers, they
yes.
Get one pretty quickly.
Most carnivals wanted one, and they wanted
away,
one
yeah.
right now because they saw them out making money, and it was like they were taking in money hand over fist. So
well, anything that was a ride then was just, and a successful one at top of it must have been just mind blowing to them
because that was the era of when not only Selners with the Tilt-A-Whirl, but the Irely Company started building the Octopus and those things. So all these new rides were starting to come out in the 50s. And it was, but you could have one of each on your show and not have too many rides.
Did they know that back then? You make me think of all these things that nobody ever thinks. I was just... or it was like, well, we better not have too many riders. They won't ride more than one, or.
Well, I think they found, and they visited each other's shows, and they visited people who had bought the rides,
rumors, just like it is today.
Yeah, to see how it was going and whether they had a lot of people, and so most of them figured out pretty quickly or heard word of mouth.
Yeah.
How much money they were making on them, and so everybody.
Or went to the Minnesota State Fair and saw Royal there with whatever.
Oh yeah.
Bunch of wheels or a bunch of lined up, because that was a big thing too, to put the wheels and stack them or put them in a row.
And I was trying to think of the name of the gentleman who, for a state fair, he put up 6 wheels across.
Wasn't that like Century 21? Was it Al Coons?
No, it was before him, I believe.
Okay.
I wish I could remember. It's just kind of.
Remember what part of the country?
Well, he did state fairs, so they moved around quite a bit. But they would have.
Johnny J. Jones?
No.
No.
They would have 2 16s. And then 2 12s and 2 5s. What?
Zetlin and Wilson?
No.
I'm running out of carnivals.
I'm
not Amusements of America.
No.
Although I saw a picture where they had a couple in a row. They wouldn't come around until 40s or 50s.
But it was just, it was quite a business back then when you could just answer the phone and sell rides over the phone without.
Somebody's going to call up about the podcast and say, that was such and such. How could you not know that?
Well, I should know, but
not you, me. They'll say, yeah. They're not going to yell at you. You're too nice.
Well, thank you.
That's true.
But it's just such a wonderful history.
It's
of one of the ride families, because usually families built rides and families ran carnivals, and so it's very much a family tradition.
Yeah, but your brand has lasted past everyone. I mean, there's nobody that's
125 years old.
Not even close. I mean, not even close.
Well, I think
and that's so
there
synonymous
may be,
with a brand.
Yeah.
Like, right, you can't. I was telling your friend Bob Casada earlier that because him too, and you guys are similar in a way, because he built a brand that's pretty amazing. I mean,
It
he
is.
built from his garage into an international powerhouse in a way. I mean,
they're huge.
It's unbelievable how far he came and what he did, and Eli Bridge is really the only business in this industry that is, I mean, your history is the amusement history. I mean, it's the same.
Well, I think over in all fairness, over in Germany, I think there is a company who is actually a manufacturing company before Eli, but they didn't build ride equipment until after Eli was building it.
I'm talking more, I'm being very Americanistic.
Oh,
whatever, but because you didn't have a lot of crossover until Patty Conklin and those people would go over and buy some rides, and that was later on, really until the 80s, big things didn't come over here. That was a whole different ballgame. So your involvement with the company, when did that start, and how were you just born into it your whole life? You knew you were going to be a...
No, I actually started with Eli in trying to think, 1975 maybe.
And how'd your job interview go?
Well, it was interesting, shall we say. But I've been there and away, and there and away, and this is my third time back to Eli Bridge. And I started out in the accounting department, and then I was vice president and in charge of safety and quality. So then, because that quality was my main focus when I went to college and got my bachelor's and master's degrees, and then there was...
That was their big mistake then, putting you in charge of quality, because the rides that you build, I mean, as a businessman, they last forever.
Well, now in all honesty, my great grandfather had a saying.
They should go away after a while, so you can sell new ones.
No, obsolescence was never part of the
It's not,
plan.
because there's scramblers from probably 1953 still out there working. You know, it's unbelievable.
It is.
It's unbelievable.
But my great grandfather had a saying, and it was, "It's not good enough if it can be made better."
It's not good enough. It could be made. That makes sense. Okay.
That was the original quality, saying in our, mantra, I guess.
But your rides are there's wheels still operating, like the person you said, 1950 some, and the inspectors don't want to throw it away. This is a perfectly great ride.
We still sell parts to a 1903 wheel and a 1907 wheel.
Really?
And yes.
And the parts are somewhat modern now, or are they the same parts you use?
They're the same parts.
That is incredible.
That were put on the wheel.
I guess it hasn't changed all that much.
Well,
somewhat, but
since we've been going with the rim drive and electric and everything, it has changed. Well, when we went with rim drive, we had to beef up the spokes. We kept making improvements to the wheels, so now they last longer.
It's like what are the people looking for eternal life? Eli Bridge already has the answer, apparently. I mean, your stuff is it's notorious for being.
If it's well taken care of and properly maintained, we don't really know how long they'll last if they're treated well, and they haven't been in a wreck or on the road.
The only thing I remember because I owned one at one time, but the pins, you had to replace the pins at some time. That was the only thing that you ever really. Yeah. I mean, that was must do.
Yeah, we have pins and cables that have to be replaced, but it's we tried to build it so it would last in the first place, and
you've had a couple other pieces that have come out over the year. I mean, the The mini wheel was a nice little hit, I guess, for a while.
The kiddie wheel, the first kiddie wheel was designed and built probably back in the early 1900s. But the newer one was totally redesigned, and it's got more lights on it than a High Five 2 does.
Is that right? And then the kiddie ride you made, the
construction zone.
That was a popular ride too.
Yes, it was.
You're still making a few of those here and there?
Well, not recently, because we've been so busy with
wheels.
and scramblers. We just finished trailer mounting a scrambler for a customer, and now we're doing another one for another customer. And as it turns out, they're in the same family, but they hadn't talked to each other to know that the other one was having their trailer mounted. So, but they have two different units, so it's a good thing for both of them. And I think a lot of scrambler owners are finding that to get people to lift the pig iron and everything, they want trailer mounted scramblers.
And when did that come about, the trailer mounted scrambler?
Well, we had been trailer mounting scramblers since the late 70s, I think, but it was a 48-foot trailer.
Right.
So, but everybody really wanted a 28-foot trailer so they could double. Pups. And so the pup came about when I got back to Eli, and I said, we're going to build a 28-foot trailer for a scrambler. Whereupon my engineer at the time said, oh, we can never fit one on there. I said, oh, but we can. And we will figure it out.
And you did.
And we did.
And so one of the other things that's I know near and dear to your heart is safety and the safety of the whole industry. You've been involved
yes
for a long time. Could you tell us a little bit about your involvement, what you've done, what you've continued to try to do for the industry? And
Well, I've taught at I don't know how many different safeties.
NARSO type,
Well, NARSO and Northwest Showman's and the Ames.
You just go, see, my
safety.
rides never break.
Oh no, there's still things that have to be properly maintained.
I'm just teasing.
And anymore,
there's a truth in it, but yes.
Anymore, one of the biggest things is just trying to be sure that the passengers, the guests riding, behave properly, which was what brought me into writing a whole training program for kids in schools.
If we could just eliminate the customer, would be great.
It'd be hard to get their money though.
Just pay and watch from over here.
Yeah. So.
But it's so true, because we, sometimes, and just looking at numbers, we observe from the outside, and somebody who especially doesn't know the industry might say, well, we need to have another layer of inspection. You can inspect till the dogs come home. These things are safe. I mean, super duper safe.
Well, they still have to be properly maintained, though.
Yeah, of course.
And set up properly.
But I'm saying that the percentage of faults, real faults, is infinitesimal. But now a rider acting irresponsibly, that's where you can make some. You have to look at where you can make the difference. Going from 0.1% to 0 is, if you're dealing with a machine, is impossible in one sense.
And I wrote a training program for grade school children, because if you don't start there, then you've already lost it by the time teenagers,
I kind of remember
getting
that,
started.
Actually, that you did that.
And
That's
so, and when I started it, I would go around to the schools in Jacksonville, and I had a program that I, had a screen to put it on, and showed them different things about safety and just how to have a safe fun at the carnival or at the
try to make the
parks.
rides more exciting than it already is.
And yeah, you don't want it so exciting that you get hurt. So I designed this program, and then OABA got interested in it, and they helped promote it. And I taught that at all the different seminars as well. So, and one thing that made me feel like this really does make a difference was when one of the moms called me in July after her 2 kids had been in my training class in May. And she said, "Did you tell my kids they couldn't wear flip-flops to the carnival?" I said, "As a matter of fact, yes, I did, because there are too many trips and falls in this industry, and plus the idea that the flip-flops can fall off the kids' feet in a ride, especially something like a wheel or something like that. And we want to have them. I even taught them as far as don't wear big baggy clothes that can get hung up on something. But so I had told these kids at the school that they shouldn't wear flip-flops, and so it just warmed my heart that this boy was telling his sister that she couldn't wear flip-flops because don't you remember what Miss Sullivan said? And that's so great. I was, he remembered that for 2 months. And so I thought that was, real telling about.
Impactful, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, when you're talking about amusement rides, kids are paying attention because it's something fun. And hopefully it's something that lots of them will get to do. And so we just want everybody to be as safe as possible.
And your passion for safety, it's been, I know as long as I've known you or known about you even, you've been very involved with safety and the greater industry safety.
And the F-24 ASTM committee.
770 or so, whatever they call themselves now. They
well, it's F-24, and then there are all these
sub things.
Yeah, different sets of standards that the design standard, the manufacturing standard, the operations standard, all those things that we've done at ASTM.
Right.
And it's just and that's been a wonderful thing for me too, that I've met so many other people in the industry, like Disney engineers and Universal engineers, some really smart people, and I've learned a lot.
And they all say, "How do you get that ride to last forever?"
Well, when one of them asked me, "Well, how many wheels have you guys built?" And I said, 1,400 and some, because this was a number of years ago. They said, "What?"
It's got to be the most popular ride ever made, right? I mean,
well, I'd like to say that.
I can't imagine anybody selling 1,400 or something. I just, maybe merry-go-round, but different manufacturers, different brands, things like that.
But we've just been very fortunate that my great-grandfather started out building things with integrity.
Incredible.
And if engineering standards say we should use this much steel, then we use more. Because
he'd be proud to know that his stuff is still around,
here,
still operating, still below.
I'm sure he's up there smiling right now.
And that name still is, I mean, the Eli Bridge name is
still alive and well.
It's better than alive and well. It's the top level of it's the industry standard. I mean, if you want to make a ride, this is the standard to be made to. And I want to thank you for sharing with us your history, your family's history, and all that you've done for the industry in general. And I hope people will learn all about Eli Bridge. I can't believe they won't know. I just can't believe it. But
there's always someone out there.
Archives and read everything because it fascinates me. Thank you so much, Patty, for coming on.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
And happy 125 years old.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't I hold my age well?
You do. You look great.
This podcast is brought to you by Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Our staff of professionals can guide you through your setup, assist with customer service, even on the weekends when you most need it, and help increase your sales through promotions that work. Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Sign up today at innovativeticketing.com.